Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you again so much for our time together. Last night, Revival Nights at South Campus with Joe and Becky. We'll look forward to having a wonderful time, and then they're off to Davao for Saturday and Sunday services in Davao, and then they'll be back in for East Campus next week. We'll look forward to a great night next week. Those of you in Davao have a great weekend this weekend, and then East Campus Revival Nights next week. We'll have fun. Where do we begin today in Hebrews 11? I mean, every verse is more than one sermon, so how do you even begin to talk through this passage? But let me just take a couple of thoughts and throw them up in the air for us to do some meditation on today. One is over in verse 4. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as a righteous man when God spoke well of his offerings. Now, I don't have to teach much on giving at COP because our people are such good givers. But it amazes me today how in this season, prior to a great move of the Spirit, prior to another great revival, just like in the season of Malachi before God went silent for 400 years, when the people of God have pulled away from God and spiritual leaders are no longer bringing people to God, offerings begin to be something that are spoken against. Offerings begin to be something that are put down and laughed at, and offerings begin to be despised because it shows our hearts toward God. And some of you, you've given so generously and you've listened to your relatives, and maybe they claim a little Christianity, but not much. And they really put you down about your offerings. I want you to just remember, God spoke well of his offerings. How does God speak about your offering? When you sow a seed for the building project, when you sow a seed to help feed the poor, when you sow a seed to help spread the gospel, how does God speak of your offering? It doesn't matter what other people say. God speaks well of it. But what I really want you to think about today is over here in verse 15. If they had been thinking of a country they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he prepared a city for them. The thing that made God not ashamed of them is where their thoughts were focused. Now, New Century Version back in Proverbs says it this way: be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. They were thinking about the past. And if you're always focused on the past, there'll be the opportunity to return. Your thoughts create opportunities. Now, I know people don't like it when you talk about things like that, but that's exactly what it says. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. If you're always thinking of your past, opportunities will happen. If you're always thinking of your past girlfriend from college, instead of thinking about the wife that you have today and the children that God has blessed you with, you'll have opportunity to go back, I promise you. If you've been thinking about your past sinful life, you will have opportunity to go back, I promise you. Your thoughts release a spiritual force, and I don't know any other way to say it, but a spiritual force that creates opportunities. Now, what we have to learn to do is leave the past in the past. As Paul said, whatsoever things are behind, I put behind and I press forward. We have to learn that in our minds, we need to be thinking for the future and not for the past. If we will long for the place where we're going, if we will long for the destiny that God has for us, God said, I won't be ashamed of you. Now, that's a beautiful thought, because I never want God to be ashamed of me. So I'm going to spend my life focused on where God is taking me, on the destiny that God has for me. And I'm going to leave that old nasty past that I had alone. I don't want to go back to it. I don't want to go back to what my life was. I won't go back. We sing the song all the time. I'm not even going to think about the past. Watch your thoughts, because your thoughts run your life.